Notify here with how editing works. Coming at you with another tutorial. Today we're doing motion tracking with Cinema 4D and Buju. There's several other ways to do it. I think we'll cover those at some point involving 3ds Max and whatnot. But for today we're doing Cinema 4D and Buju. So what you're going to need is obviously these two programs, and I'm hoping you have them if you're wanting to learn how to motion track. And obviously this is going to be a bit of a longer tutorial, so make sure you got your drink and your chips and just sit back. So you're going to need a video clip of some kind of cinematic, preferably smooth moving camera, that it tends to work better. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this. You can open it in Vegas or After Effects, either one will do the job. I'll use Vegas for this. I'll let that load up real quick. Oh, by the way, Zone Rhino wants me to say he's a sexy boy, so there we go. That's for you, Rhino. No, I don't want to restore that. So I'm going to be using the cinematic that I just used in TGN Riser's episode that I just did. So we're going to drag that in here. And what you want to do is drag your cinematic here. You want to make sure you go Properties, Disable Resample, and then turn off Maintain Aspect Ratio and reduce your interlace flicker. That doesn't make too much of a difference, but it does make a difference. You want to highlight your clips. Make sure your project settings look something like this. This tends to give me the best quality rendering in Vegas. So if you need to pause the video real quick to get these, feel free to do so. So you're going to go File, Render As. And what you want to do here is you want to make a new folder because you're going to be creating several image sequence pictures. You want to name that, say, Cinematic Images for Tutorial. Yeah, we'll go with that. Alright guys, so what you want to do is you want to open up that folder. You want to choose your Save As type as an image sequence. And then either PNG or JPEG work best. I like PNG. And we're going to come in here. We're going to call this How Editing Works. And what it's going to do, when you click Save, it's going to render out every individual frame as its own picture in a .png or .jpeg, whichever one you chose. Doesn't make a difference. So we're going to let that go real quick. It should go real fast. Actually, hold up. As far as motion tracking goes, it really doesn't make a difference whether you're in 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second. I tend to feel like 30 frames per second works the best. So you want to go to Properties. You want to change this frame rate down to 29.97 NTSC. Click Apply and OK. Because when you click Render as an image sequence, it goes by the project settings. So we're going to come back here and we want to go How Editing Works .png. I'll click Save. Oops. I forgot that I can't just overwrite those. So we're going to come in here, we're going to make another folder called Take 2. Come in here, we're going to name this How Editing Works. And we're just going to render this out real quick. And now it's rendering in 30 frames per second because you'll see that when you actually motion track it, it's a lot easier if you go in 30 frames per second. So there's not that many frames to render out in Cinema 4D because that's what's going to take quite a while. So we'll let this render real quick. It's 40 seconds, shouldn't be too long. I might fast forward. And we are back. Alright guys. So we've just rendered this out as an image sequence. You're going to go ahead and close Vegas or After Effects, whichever one you chose. And you're going to go ahead and open up Buju now. I use Buju 5.0. You can do this in 4.0. You can do any Buju. But 5.0 is the most updated version to my knowledge, and that's the one I choose to use. Minecraft for all the pros, you know. Oh, and if you're wondering what this dock is, it's called Rocket Dock. You can just go to rocketdock.com or search it on Google. It should come up. It's a free download. It's a nice little toolbar. Alright, so here we are in Buju. I know it looks a little bit complicated, but for our purposes it's pretty easy. So you want to come in here. You want to find the folder that you used. We used Take 2. And you want to select the very first image in the sequence, and it should be labeled 0000. And you should show you a preview here. You want to click Open. And then here, really important guys, you want to make sure your frame rate is the same as you rendered it out, and I rendered it out in 29.97, so I need to select that frame rate. I need to click apply, and no, I would not like to mask it. And you click close. So here we are. You can kind of drag along the timeline. You can see the cinematic as it moves. And the good thing about Buju is that it does a lot of the work for you. So you come here, you click track features, make sure you have all frames selected, then you can click start, and it should take under a minute, if anything, and maybe 2 minutes to track all the features in Buju. So I might fast forward this. And we're back, guys. So Buju has just successfully motion track, or at least tracked all the features in this clip. As you drag along the timeline, you can see the yellow lines are the movement of the individual features. So you can see that all the features are tracked going all the way across, but we don't need all these points. So what we need to go do here is go to camera solve, make sure you have all frames selected. Click optimize both radial distortion and camera path smoothness. Some versions of Buju will only have camera path smoothness, so just make sure you have that selected. You want to click start. This one's super fast. See, it's already at 80%. It's just going to choose the features that are present throughout the entire video clip, so you don't have something that just pops up for 2 frames and then goes away. And this allows Buju to track the motion of the camera, so when you go into the 3D mode, it's much more accurate. So all of those should have transformed into these yellow and blue dots, as you can see. As you scroll through, they're still the same. Now what you want to do here for the actual tracking purposes for Cinema 4D to be able to read this format is you want to go here to about the center of your clip, and then we need to go into scene geometry. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to select some of these points that tells Buju, or tells Cinema 4D what orientation this video clip is in. So we need to come here, we need to go add coordinates from hint. We need to go x-axis is the first thing I always tend to do. So what x-axis is in Cinema 4D, that's basically the left to right. So there's a z-axis, which is up and down, or sorry, back and forth. There's a y-axis, which is up and down, and there's an x-axis, which is left to right. So here we click x-axis, and then to select the points that we want with it, and then you always want to get the longest straight line that you can get for these. So the longest straight line present on here, because I want my text to be above this crosswalk, is... So we want to choose this farthest dot here, and then this one here, and that gives us a pretty straight line for the x-axis from left to right. So we want to click connect to selected, and then we want to click add coordinates from hint. Since we're starting a new one, we've already tracked the x-axis. Now you want to make sure to change this type to, let's go z-axis here. So we're going to come here, and now we need to select 2 different points. So deselect those. Then we're going to come and we're going to select, I would say, probably this point and this point would be our best z-axis. So we're going to come here, we're going to click z-axis, and then we're going to click connect to selected. We're going to add one more coordinate from a hint, because you need to give it the best center for it to work out of. So you want to make sure to change this to origin. And I'm going to choose this point here since it's relatively in the center of the clip, but still to where the text will be on this crosswalk. Now we're going to connect it to selected. Then we're going to update the coordinate frame. Now what you want to do to make sure that it's actually tracked is add the test object. There's several different things you can pick from, but the ladybird is the most effective. Now I know here it shows it as being on top of the truck, but that's just because this is a 2-dimensional scene. When you're actually in Cinema 4D adding the text, you can just move it back so it's not on top of the truck. But it seems to be tracked pretty well. You can see the left edge of the ladybug stays on the left edge of this stripe on the crosswalk. We scroll through, it stays there. And to be absolutely certain, you can go into the 3D mode. You can hold, I believe it's, what is it, 2? Or shift? We can hold shift to move around in 3D. And then you can see how some points are above, some points are on a flat surface. So if you select like this group of flat points here, and you go back into 2D mode, you can see that this is all one flat surface and they're all selected. So it has tracked properly. Now to get it in Cinema 4D for the fun part, you want to go export, export camera solve, And then you can choose your location. I have it saved to the desktop for the purposes of this tutorial. You want to make sure it's in a Cinema 4D format for this purposes. Later we're going to do a, I think we're doing 3D Max tutorial. And you want to scale the scene by 100. That's actually pretty important, so make sure you get that. And then you want to click save. It should save pretty quickly. Now we can get out of Buju. And we should have our untitled project right here. You want to double click that to open it up. And this is where people normally tend to get confused, so I'll try to explain this the best that I can. Alright, so here, when we go into Cinema 4D, it's going to open up a Lightwave 3D import menu. And you want to make sure the scale is set at 10 on here, and that should be just fine. You click OK. And it'll come up with this weird thing of black dots that don't seem to make any sense or have any relevance to us. But, alright, so that's your camera track. Now what you need to do is you need to come and you need to go onto this light, and you want to click background. Because we need to be able to see what we're doing. No, I don't want any more languages on Cinema 4D. Now to get the background, you want to come here, you want to make a material, and double click it to open it up. Turn off specular because we don't need any specularity for the purposes of this. And then you want to go to color. On the color menu, you want to click texture and click the 3 dots next to it. Sorry, that was my phone. Now you need to go to where you saved the image sequence. And I saved it in Cinematics Take 2. You want to click the very first one and click no. Now what that did is it tracked and apply that to your background. Now what that did is it has the very first frame there, but you see it's just the first one. It doesn't actually move as you go along. So it's kind of confusing, and I had trouble with this when I was first doing it. But the solution is you double click here, you double click on the picture, you want to go to animation, and then just click calculate, and it should calculate it. And then as you scroll across, you can see that the image of the background now updates as you scroll frame by frame and keeps up with it, so it is actually motion tracked. Now to get your text, you can go MoGraph, MoText, and I like to have a depth of like 60, maybe 80. We could change this to how editing works. Take a font of, I don't know, we'll keep it simple, a font everyone has for this. Agency FB bolded. We'll make this center or middle, and then we'll drop it back and over to the right. And then you want to go caps, you want to go fillet cap, and for the best effect as far as color schemes work for this, it's best to make the fillet type engraved here, and you're going to see that makes it look really weird, but it'll help out in a second. So what you want to do here is you want to open up or go to File on the Materials panel and go Load Materials. I have a bunch of material packs that I've downloaded over time. This is Code Draco, Acres HD. This one's a material pack I've been using lately. I don't know where I got it, but it's called Huge Material Pack. And there's a bunch of different materials in here. But as far as text goes, what I like to do is take this black, drag it onto here. Oh, not the background. Oops, did not mean to do that. Take this black, drag it onto the text. Then when you render that out, you see this weird black text that has nothing to do with anything. You want to come here, you want to go Control C and Control V to duplicate it. Then you want to drag the white onto the top one, and you want to change the caps on that text layer from engraved to, I'm sorry, you want to change it to cap instead of fillet cap. And then you can see that gives you the white interior with the black edges, and I find that that gives you the best text effect, at least as far as simple animation goes. Now when you render this out, you'll see okay, but that doesn't look like it's actually supposed to be there. It just looks like random text in the middle of a scene. And the way you overcome that is with shadows. So shadows get a bit more complicated, but what you need to do is you need to go to this square here, or the cube, sorry, and you click plane. Now you're going to get this small plane. You want to move it back and make it, sorry, you want to move it back underneath your text. And then you want to drag this tool, the scale tool, and scale it until it covers a pretty good area, wherever you think a shadow actually could be. So we're going to go there. Now what you need to do is you need to take your image track material, which is here, the very first material we have. You want to drag it onto the plane, and you want to come here and change it from UVW mapping as the projection to frontal. Then when you render it out, it doesn't show up in here. Well, it shows up as a light gray square. And the way you want to fix that is you go, while you have plane selected, go tags, Cinema 4D tags, compositing. Turn off self-shadowing and turn on compositing background. And then when you render it out, it doesn't show anything. Now, all that does is it allows us a surface to show shadows. So what we need to do is we need to add a light. And the first light we add should... Oops, I'm sorry, I was on the scale tool. The first light we add should be a frontal-facing light, just for the purposes of making sure you can see the text after we put a light behind it to cast shadows. Now, you can obviously see the text, and we might actually want to elevate this text. So can choose both of those and then raise it up a little bit so that you can see the whole G. Now, this text is floating, and to make it look like that, what we need to do is we need to add another light. And you can see that the position of the shadows of other objects in the scene is already coming this way. So we want our light to make it look that way too. So we're going to come back here and drag it this way so that we get the same kind of effect with our shadow. Now, to make sure that this light actually gives off shadows, we need to come here. We need to click on the Shadow tab on the light, the new light we just made, and click Shadow Map Soft. Now, when you render this out, you can see shadows made here. And to make it look like it's floating, you simply drag this up higher, and then when you click the render, the shadow should be more underneath it. Now, you want to try to match the shadow that this gives with the color of the shadow there, and to do that, you can change the density of the shadow to lower to give it a lighter gray color. And it's still kind of dark there. So we'll go to maybe 80. And then maybe even 70. So now you have a pretty realistic looking shadow, and it looks like that text actually belongs there. And as you see, it's motion tracked all the way around. When I come here, the shadow is still there. So you can also, if you want to go animated, you can animate the text to move, to keyframe it with this. But for the purposes of just simply motion tracking text, this is just about done. Now what you need to do is you need to come into your render settings, go to make sure your general's on full render, go output, make sure it's 1280 by 720, and change the frame range from current frames to all frames. Now you want to go to save, and you want to make sure you're saving this as I prefer to save it as a QuickTime movie, and then you can go back in later and edit it out, edit what you need, add color correction. Oh, another important thing, make sure you don't color correct this until you've already added the text. Otherwise you have a color corrected scene with just black and white text that hasn't been color corrected. It's better to color correct it after you've added the text so that it actually, the color correction makes it look more like it's supposed to be a part of the scene. So on this save panel, you want to come here, you want to click QuickTime Movie. You want to give it a name, any kind of name, tutorial, and then you want to click this and choose where you want to save it. I'll save it to the desktop. And then for those of you who really want a nice looking one, you can turn on the global illumination effect. That'll like 10 times the render time that it'll take. So it's not really necessary when you're doing simple animation, but if you're doing something that's really professional, you might want to do that. Then you can close out of here, and you can click on this to begin your render. So guys, that's been motion tracking with Cinema 4D and Buju for How Editing Works has been Notify. I'm out.